Welcome back to the Bitcoin Layer. I'm Nick Bhatia. Today we welcome Vaughn Kellerman of Sound Advisory. Sound Advisory is a Bitcoin-oriented registered investment advisor, an RIA, that's affiliated with Unchained. Vaughn, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nick. Glad to be here.
Now, your clients are mostly Bitcoiners. They have about half of their net worth or more, sometimes less, sometimes more, but about half of their net worth is in Bitcoin. They've been down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. They know about Bitcoin, but they come to you because they need help planning for retirement, estate planning. They need help with how they're going to deal with Bitcoin and their heirs. What about if they need to start spending that money later in life? How do they plan for that? We've talked about Unchained's retirement calculator on this show a bunch. So why don't you walk people through what you do at Sound Advisory and why it's unique and the type of clients that you have already?
Yeah, certainly. So, just to give some background on me, so I've been in finance for 11 years now, almost 12 years, I guess now. So, came from the traditional realm, right? So, Bitcoin was a taboo topic. You didn't talk about it. Just trying to, when I went down the rabbit hole in 2017, just started to try to get people, 2 to 3% allocations into Bitcoin. And my prior firms just weren't having it. So, came here to Sound Advisory. Our unofficial mission statement is we're trying to marry traditional financial planning with Bitcoin, right? So all of our clients are, like you said, deep down the hole, down the rabbit hole Bitcoiners. Usually have a good accumulation of Bitcoin as their investable net worth, but all that traditional financial planning stuff still exists, right? So we have clients, age range varies. There's a big difference between a client that's 45 with a couple young kids and still accumulating versus clients that are heading into retirement or into retirement. And they'll have those questions around, how do I live off my Bitcoin? Is this too much Bitcoin? What are my risks? So I would say the pillar of what we do, or the three pillars of what we do, is retirement / cash flow planning, right? Making sure that they're going to live a successful retirement. Estate planning, inheritance planning, right? So making sure their documents are set up, that the Bitcoin's passing as intended when or if something happens to them. And then tax planning, which I'm sure we'll dive into a little bit, but we can't have a conversation with a client without taxes being impacted. So we do a lot of work on the tax planning side of things, both how to sell Bitcoin effectively, but then also utilizing other assets too to reduce the tax burden as much as we can. To avoid paying the IRS, to give them a tip. I always like to say, you got to pay your taxes, but no point leaving Uncle Sam a tip. So,
Vaughn, what is the secret, if there is one, to Bitcoin tax planning? Because you mentioned, you know, that when you sell Bitcoin, that's a taxable event. By United States tax law, that is the case. We know that the IRS taxes Bitcoin as property. So just like gold or real estate. Now, ignoring any potential changes on that front, we don't have to discuss that today. What is the secret sauce to tax planning for Bitcoin? And what is that? And I know it's going to be custom for everyone. Everyone has a different situation, but what value are you adding to people's planning process? And maybe you can also, because a lot of our viewers are Unchained clients, right? So they have a setup in which they have a multi-sig custody solution. They have self-custody. They feel like they have self-custody. They have a backup plan because they have Unchained as well. So how do you take Unchained clients and then you can layer in the tax implications for a lot of your clients as well?
yeah, certainly. So that is a big benefit of us being, so we're an affiliate of Unchained. So the nice thing for our clients, all Sound Advisory clients become Unchained Signature clients if they aren't already with Unchained and Unchained Signature. So we're really trying to bring as much in-house as we can. So we have, those guys are the Bitcoin technical experts. I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm always going to defer to them on protecting the Bitcoin. And then we're on the planning side. So big benefit going into tax conversation is we can open up vaults over there at Unchained for whatever type of assets the client has, right? So one of the first things we're talking to clients about is, let's get these different tax buckets filled up or evened out, not necessarily like a third into pre-tax money, like a traditional 401k, Roth, IRA assets, and then taxable Bitcoin. we just want to have options, right? So then when we do start talking about, okay, how do we pull these assets out to live off of? We can build out that cash flow plan that's pulling from all those buckets. So that way we're reducing the tax burden as much as possible. So that's really the first step. Um, when we're looking at just selling Bitcoin, right, the capital gains are the capital gains. So we have to deal with that. But we look at combining that with certain strategies too. Charitable gifting is a big one that we use with a lot of our clients. Have to be charitably inclined, right? But if you are, can give away some of your Bitcoin or some other assets you have, stocks, cash, and then get that tax deduction to reduce that tax burden. We also have a CPA on staff too, so we brought tax filing in house. A big part of what he does is collect their cost basis information, get that organized, and then that allows us to say to the IRS to say, okay, we're selling this lot, this lot, this lot, and this lot. This will reduce your tax burden as much as possible instead of just saying, hey, we're selling the first Bitcoin you bought way back when it was $1,000 a coin or whatever the case may be, right? So trying to, and all these strategies come together and a lot of them overlap. So we're trying to piece all these things together to, one, reduce the taxes as much as possible, but then also there's certain Bitcoin that makes more sense to either give charitably or to hold on to forever and give away to kids or grandchildren or whoever that might be as well.
And part of what we do at the Bitcoin layer, our viewers understand this, is that we're not here to go out and recommend that people buy Bitcoin at any specific point in time. We're an educational resource. Of course, we endorse a Bitcoin allocation as
Mm-hmm.
an investment approach. But outside of that, we cannot give and we do not attempt to give financial advice. Vaughn at Sound Advisory, these guys, their profession is to offer not only the investment advice, but the planning advice. You see the CFP certificate behind Vaughn. So he's a certified financial planner. They have a CPA in-house, which is a tax professional. And so when people are asking me questions about what should I do with my tax basis or how should I approach retirement IRA, you have to hire a professional in that space with the appropriate regulations and the background to get through some of those decisions. And even at that point, then you still have to use your own common sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important for people to understand that go seek that professional help. Just because you are already a Bitcoiner doesn't mean you have every question answered about how to deal with that. You're long, that's a great start, right? But we want to make sure that people are planning correctly. Especially if you have children, if you have a spouse, if you have family that you want to pass it down, if you don't have family but you want to pass it down somewhere specifically also, if you're charitably inclined, any of these things, you need some help. So our goal is to bring people on that can be that resource. And so I hope that people go, check out Sound Advisory and understand what the association is with Unchained. Why is a vault at Unchained relevant to what Vaughn is doing? And how does that help people plan for the future? And then on the tax thing, one last thing I want to say, maybe you can follow up on this, is that in the US, per our tax law, we basically have a choice of how to pay our taxes, especially if, for example, you accumulate Bitcoin in several purchases, like he mentioned, lots. In several lots over the course of several years, you can choose LIFO, you can choose FIFO, you can maneuver your way around your tax basis, granted that you're following the tax laws. So how do you suggest, is it just minimizing the burden when people are looking at last in or first in or average cost, and what's maybe the most common that you see when you give that advice?
Yeah, so I would say when a client comes to us, if they've sold Bitcoin in the past, it's almost always first in, first out, right? So they don't want to go through the hassle of trying to figure out the tax code. They're just going to say, hey, I sold this $50,000 of Bitcoin, and the IRS will say, okay, well, this is the amount that was your basis. The rest is taxable, right? And if you're an OG Bitcoiner, even a few years back, right, that could be $10,000 a basis and $40,000 on gain. So I would say with the majority of our clients, of course, it can always change depending on the individual, but the general recommendation is going to be, let's collect your cost basis, let's organize it, and we're going to do specific lot identification, especially with Bitcoin's volatility, right? The 4-year cycle, it's going crazy. if you've been accumulating the whole time, there's very likely a lot of different lots all over the chart in terms of price. And we can pick those out to make sure that you're paying the least tax possible, right? So, and to a couple points you just made as well. So we have clients that come to us and they said, hey, I started buying Bitcoin in 2013. I was in Mt. Gox. I have no idea what the basis on those coins is. That's totally fine. Our CPA collects it. He's going to say, hey, you gave us XYZ amount. This is what we know, but you told us you have 4 more Bitcoin out there. Perfect Bitcoin to give away charitably. Just totally get rid of that basis issue. Perfect Bitcoin to hold on till you pass that to your children. They get a step up in basis on that Bitcoin, right? So your audience may know what this means, but basically, if I die tomorrow, my children receive my Bitcoin, they're going to get it at 85,000 or whatever dollars we are today instead of my basis of $8,000 or whatever that number is. So that's a huge benefit. So that helps us make those decisions on which Bitcoin we're using. And we just briefly touched on it before, but also the different buckets too, right? Unchained has Roth IRAs, has traditional IRAs. You can hold Bitcoin in. So client comes to us and says, hey, I'm doing a $200,000 home renovation this year. If you sell all that as taxable Bitcoin, pay 15% on the gains, up to 20% potentially, or you can pull that out of your Roth IRA bucket, assuming you're of age and it's going to be tax free. That's a great large expense to pull that out and pay no taxes on. So that's what we're trying to work with when we talk about cash flow planning, just making sure that they're making the smart decisions in terms of how not to blow up your tax situation, right? And if I can just real quick story, I think you'll find this interesting. So we had a client come to us a couple months ago. OG Bitcoiner started buying in 2011 and basically played out just like I just described. He sold a whole bunch of Bitcoin 2023. He said, I didn't want to deal with taxes. I just paid them. It is what it is. And we said, well, we can go back and look at that and just collect your basis and see what we can do. Numbers are still getting worked out, but we're going to be able to go back and amend his 23 return and save him somewhere around $85,000 to $90,000 in taxes. So it's a huge number. And he's getting that all back, right? So he was obviously pumped up about it. And that's a one-off situation, right? It's not going to always be like that, but there's always going to be some benefit of just checking through that, making sure we're making the right decisions for sure.
Yeah, I've had conversations with people at Unchained, people that have been there for a long time, and the smile on their face when they have helped someone recover Bitcoin, and on your side, it's recovering taxes that you've already paid to the IRS, and you think is gone, and you can actually potentially recover. That must drive you and charge you up, because I've been in the Unchained offices, and I know that it charges them up.
Yeah, certainly. Anytime that usually what I'll tell people is if we find a way to legally reduce your tax burden, that's the Bitcoiner dream, right? You're living off your Bitcoin, you're not paying taxes to the IRS, or at least less taxes than you thought. That's a great feeling, right? But yeah, that's an even better feeling when we can come back to someone and say, hey, you overpaid, let's get this money back. And same with, estate planning, making sure those documents are set up. So it's not the most fun stuff to talk about. I'll be honest with you. I think most people know that. Because you're talking about your death, right? And your spouse's death and what happens. But I can see the relief on my clients' faces once we have those documents established. We know everything's going to pass as intended. And from there, it's doing that legwork at the beginning and then just amending as needed. A financial plan, it's a living, breathing document. I tell my clients all the time, I'm never going to be able to just put something in front of you and say, okay, talk to you in 20 years. So we're always updating it, always working on it. Goals change, life events change. So we're always there to help provide that support. So I say a good financial planner is, the quarterback of your team, right? So we're in charge, we're helping make plans, recommendations, strategies, but I might have a CPA over here to help, or an estate planning attorney. So we can connect all those people together. And then we're a partnership with the client of helping make those decisions. So
My version of that, Vaughn, is last night as I finished my class at USC. I was teaching repo and shadow money, and a student came up to me and asked me a question, but I don't understand why the investor will accept the repo. And then he answered his own question. He said, because they get interest, right? And I said, yes. And he said, Wow, I didn't think I would understand shadow money, but I did today because of you. So that,
Yeah.
brought us a big smile to my face. It really is about helping people because I think I think that's a very rewarding process. I want to ask you about ETFs. Have they changed your business, maybe not business model, but the way that you approach these conversations?
It has. So we're always on the side of the camp of hold real Bitcoin, hold it on a secured device, right? Hold it in multi-sig. But the ETFs do play a part, and I know a lot of hardcore Bitcoiners don't want Wall Street to be anywhere near the Bitcoin environment, right? But the ETFs do provide an easy on ramp to a lot of clients to just get exposure, see how it works for their allocation. They get the price appreciation and easier off ramps too sometimes too. So what I mean by that is we talk to a lot of clients that are maybe 62 years old. They're about to retire. Their biggest risk at this point is how much they're allocated to Bitcoin and short-term volatility. Right, we're seeing it right now from 109 to 78, whatever it stopped at, or I haven't checked the price today, so I don't even know. But um, that's a big risk. If they're 60% Bitcoin, they're turning off their income for the first time in their life, maybe. They have to start living off these assets. So a lot of the conversations we have with clients entering retirement is, hey, don't listen to Twitter. It's okay to shave off some Bitcoin and just redeploy that into other assets because we want to build you a cash flow for 1 to 5 years or so that's going to help you weather the storm of the Bitcoin cycle, right? So if they're sitting on a huge gain in Bitcoin and they can easily shave off $200,000, we'll get that redeployed. That's where the ETFs come in, right? So we do manage investments too. So we'll have them bring over old 401ks, IRAs, whatever they have. We can always put some of that in Bitcoin ETFs or micro strategy if their risk appetite fits that, I guess, strategy now, I should call it. So, but then we can easily redeploy that, right? So Bitcoin has a really good 2025, hopefully, does a 2x maybe from here. We can shave off some of that in an IRA. It's non-taxable, just get it out of the ETF and back into something traditional. So we're a little more hardcore than some financial advisors in terms of Bitcoin. So I think we use it a little differently. I think a lot of advisors out there are finally starting to see like Bitcoin is here to stay. Obviously, politically, that's changing a lot. So I think ETFs are just going to continue to blow up and do really well. And it, like I said, it's a good on ramp just to get started, and eventually those people hopefully can move over to hardware devices.
Yeah, absolutely. The price is at $81,000 today. The block height, as of this recording, is 887,338. We're pretty close to block height 888,888. That'll be a cool one. Um, Look at us, Bitcoiners, just getting excited about a cool block height. Vaughn, I wanted to ask you, though, about this ETF dynamic versus hardcore Bitcoiners, because what I see now is more people coming to me that have never been interested in Bitcoin, but are now willing to, because the IBIT FBTC world allows them to do so in a simple way. So my response to people is that both are going to be fine for you and it's your choice. Do you feel the need to keep gold coins in your house, or would you be okay with GLD? And the same question can be asked about Bitcoin. And some people just have no interest in private key storage because they're not protecting themselves against property seizure in their mind. They're just trying to protect themselves against credit expansion, currency devaluation, and the ETF will give them that avenue. So, you mentioned that a lot of your clients are these hardcore OG Bitcoiners, but are you getting any of that new basis that new base of clients that is just like, I'm totally fine with the ETF as 100% of my Bitcoin allocation? Whether they want to sell Bitcoin and buy the ETF, which I don't know how many people are doing that, or allocating new capital.
Yeah, I would say we don't have a client yet that doesn't have at least some amount of Bitcoin on a hardware device, right? So we certainly have plenty of clients that have the ETF exposure, even more so than physical Bitcoin, so to speak, right? So I think you're going to start seeing that shift. I think that, so while I say a lot of our clients are hardcore Bitcoiners, they're deep down the rabbit hole, but there is a difference between a 2013 Bitcoiner and a 2021 Bitcoiner, right? So we do have a lot of clients that are COVID woke a lot of people up, and we see a lot of people start accumulating in 2020, 2021. Those tend to be people that are more interested or just more accepting of, hey, I'll just buy the ETF for now and just ride that wave. And then, maybe I'll transfer some in the next bear market to real Bitcoin, but I'm happy to just keep IBIT exposure or FBTC. And they're fine with that. We are fine with that too. So this might be a hot take for some Bitcoiners out there for me to say, but we're not going to require you to take all your Bitcoin to a physical device, right? If you just want to use the ETF, that's kind of where the traditional planning and the Bitcoin start to mash
And
up.
Vaughn, let me just interrupt you real quickly. This is an important point. I really want people to understand this. Vaughn is a professional certified, a certified financial planner. So it's not his job to tell you to put your Bitcoin in cold storage out of an ETF. That's not going to be his job. If it was, he wouldn't be acting necessarily as a fiduciary. He would be acting as maybe a friend or someone that's giving you that advice. And maybe, Vaughn, you might pause your professional advice and then speak personally about cold storage versus IBIT. And that would be okay in that setting to give that personal advice. But from a professional standpoint, it is your duty. Am I correct in that? And when you think about your fiduciary duty to your client, if they have IBIT and it would actually cost them tax expense to sell that and to put it into a hard Bitcoin, then you can't actually make that recommendation in good faith
Mhm.
unless there's something about the Bitcoin in cold storage that outweighs the tax that you would have to pay. So is that accurate, Vaughn?
Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, as a fiduciary, we always have to put our clients' best interests ahead of our own.
So you don't
Whatever that.
have to apologize. That's my point, is that you don't have to apologize for that take, because even though it might sound like a hot take to some Bitcoiners, it is not a hot take. It is your fiduciary duty.
Yeah, certainly. So yeah, you're absolutely right. So now I tell clients all the time, I'll say, I'm going to provide education and a recommendation. You may not take it, and that's fine. So we still may have clients that be like, you know what, I'm taking the tax hit and I'm going to move it. And then that's just when it's like, okay, well, this is going against our recommendation. We're fine with that. I'm not going to fire you as a client because you're doing this, but just mostly I just want clients to understand the ramifications, right? I can say I'm doing my job and I'm sleeping well at night if I've provided that education and that strategy and that recommendation, and then they go against it anyhow. So that does happen sometimes, and that's okay, right? So it's their life, their finances, they're making their own choices. We're just here to be like to be on their team and provide that advice and that education mostly.
Absolutely. And we, at the Bitcoin layer, we're here to be that research resource
Mm-hmm.
and that tool that gives people the ability to do their own research instead of giving them advice all the time. So hopefully people are appreciating that side of the Bitcoin layer. Now I want to ask you about 21 million, because what's funny is that over the year, and I just published my book Bitcoin Age, that as I was writing the book and you want to simplify the story of Bitcoin and explain it to people the best way you can. And man, does it ever just come down to 21 million sometimes. And so I think that as as we mature as an asset class, the 21 million actually shines brighter and brighter
Mm-hmm.
every day as the feature that I'll tell you one small short story, an epiphany that I had. This was just a couple months ago. I was in the final stages of writing my book, editing even, and I had the mayor of Vancouver on, Mr. Ken Sim, and we had a great conversation. He's trying to accumulate Bitcoin for the city of Vancouver, there in Canada, British Columbia. And I asked him, how do you get it started with people? Because you talk to a lot of people and you're going to have to convince a lot of different types of folks that we should be buying Bitcoin. And he goes, I start with 21 million. And I wanted to ask him because you want to understand what is going out there, what is going on out on the street. Because if I've been a Bitcoiner for almost 10 years, as it sounds like you have, it, it's tough to actually zoom out and see what other people are thinking about. And
Mm-hmm.
so talk about 21 million, talk about the event that we're doing for Unchained as well, and how you explain 21 million to people that might be new, maybe the spouses of the Bitcoiners that are coming into the room, the children or the parents. How do you explain it, and how do you lean on 21 million?
Yeah, certainly. So, yeah, I would say Unchained's hosting Death Taxes and 21 million next Monday, 12 p.m. Eastern. So, um, general idea or the general thesis is Bitcoin is the ultimate scarce asset, right? So, it's more scarce than any other asset in the history of the world. We just got to the point, right, where we're starting to become more scarce than gold on an inflation rate annually. So, I think for me and for Bitcoiners that have been in this space for a long time, you kind of forget that how important that is, right? That you have this fixed number that's never going to change as we continue to adopt. Everyone's going to want their piece of the pie, and there can never be any more, right? So it totally disrupts the supply demand dynamics of someone wants more of a thing, you make more of that thing, right? So when supply can't be changed, demand is there, price goes up because it's going to be more expensive for someone to get one in 10 years than 5 years. So yeah, I talk a lot about that with clients. Just when we're just talking about the importance of holding onto your stack and securing it safely and using it for future generations. So it goes back to estate planning, inheritance planning, tax planning, making sure you're being safe with your Bitcoin. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't know
think
if that answered your
no,
question
it
or not.
does, because one of the things that you have to think about are what are the alternatives, right? Gold has a unique role because it actually doesn't tarnish, it doesn't decay, and that is
Mhm.
something that is part of gold's attractiveness as an asset class. So Bitcoin mimicking that non-decaying feature is very important. But then if you compare it to equities and you say, okay, you have your whole portfolio in Apple. Well, if you have your whole portfolio in Apple, you won't be able to sleep easy every night, especially as time goes on, because you'll always be looking behind your shoulder for the competition to
Mhm.
sneak up on you. There's different ways that these equities can tarnish, right? Or decay. And Bitcoin avoids that. And the 21 million aspect, as you mentioned, it now is on an inflation basis more scarce than gold, in that the amount of Bitcoin supply coming onto the market, new supply, will never exceed gold. Or I shouldn't say will never, but at the moment is less than the amount of gold that is coming onto the market via gold mining. And
Mhm.
so we hope people will come attend that event. I'll be speaking at that event, and that is on Monday, the 20, sorry, that's on Monday, the
16th,
17th.
17th. Sorry.
Yes, it's on Monday, the 17th at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern time. And yes, and it's a free event. So please go sign up at unchained.com/TBL. And we really hope to have that open conversation and give you guys that resource, someone that you can go to, because Lord knows you're not going to be able to get tax advice from the Bitcoin layer or financial planning advice from the Bitcoin layer. It's absolutely not what we do, but we do hope to give you guys some of those trusted resources, especially those that recommend self custody, because that's when you're associating with a player that's not, or I shouldn't say that. You're associating with a player that is offering you your own path,
Mhm.
right? And I think that that's important, Vaughn.
Yeah, 100% agree. So that's what I tell clients all the time. It's, we might necessarily disagree on the option to go with, but we're here to provide recommendations in different paths, right? So a financial journey is you're walking that path on your own in your own life, right? And we're here to help and support and make educated decisions. But at the end of the day, you just want to have the most options possible. Bitcoin provides that for a lot of people, right? So that's the great thing. And then it's just figuring out for each individual client we have what's the best path forward for them and helping them choose.
Vaughn Kellerman, Sound Advisory, associated and affiliated with Unchained. They're an RIA, which is a registered investment advisor, there to give you tax and financial planning advice. Vaughn, please tell people where they can find you and where they can sign up for the event. I'll just plug it, unchained.com/TBL, to go find that link.
Yeah, certainly. I would say easiest way to find me is go to thesoundadvisory.com, book an introduction with us. No charge to you, right? So just meet us, see if we're a good fit for you. I always kind of jokingly say you got to decide if you like us or not. But if you do, we'll continue the conversation and potentially move forward together. I would say you can follow me on Twitter. V Kellerman CFP is my Twitter handle there. Not very popular. I have like 300 followers, but I'm a Bitcoiner. So if any Bitcoiners want to follow me, go ahead. But yeah, thesoundadvisory.com, best way to get in touch with us. We'd be happy to talk to any and all Bitcoiners that are looking for help. In worst case scenario, we just provide a little bit of education and get you on your way, or we work together.
Thank you, Vaughn. We'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah, thank you, Nick.